Hello, listeners! Welcome back to When Bad Things Happen to Good People, a podcast about censorship and the arts. My name's Todd Sullivan, and my co-host, as always, is Oren Barter. You didn't just do that. And today we're talking about a children's book called I Am Jazz. Way to open a podcast about a children's book, Oren.
Yeah, classy is my middle name, so...
Well, that makes sense then.
Absolutely.
How are things?
Things are good, Todd. How are you?
I'm pretty well. I am excited to have my first full-size Christmas tree up in my place. It's the first time I've had one in quite a while.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I've been, since I've had roommates the last couple of places I've been in and had really small spaces, I've had to work with, I've had a really small, little, I guess maybe 2.5, 3 foot tree. I mean, it's a nice one, but
nice.
Just very tiny. But I went to, there's a secondhand store in Kamloops here called Penny Pinchers. That's not too far from my place. And I went there a couple of weeks ago looking for a chess set, actually, because I recently watched The Queen's Gambit.
Oh, man, that is
Netflix.
So good, isn't it?
It is so good.
Oh.
And that got me into chess again, which I did end up finding a chess set on Facebook Marketplace, and I have now taught Morgan to play chess, which is very cool. Yeah.
Hey, I got a proposition for you.
Sure.
If you ever want to win at chess, play me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what I'll do is go get yourself an account at chess.com.
Okay.
And we can play some matches there.
Chess.com, give us money. Come on.
Yeah. Or if any of our listeners want to engage us in a game of chess via chess.com, send us a message. I'll play anybody and lose. If you on it. Here's the deal. Subscribe at the $2 Patreon level, and I'll play you for real. And subscribe at the $5 level, and I'll let you win.
No.
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 We save winning for the $10 level?
No. We don't. We got some integrity.
Okay, all right, fine.
We play them for real no matter what.
We'll let you win at the $500 level.
That's our integrity. that's our ceiling right there.
That's our cutoff for integrity.
You give us $500 and you're a god to us. You cannot lose.
Anyway, yeah, I've got my Christmas tree up, which is very exciting. Got a bunch of ornaments from the dollar store, but they're very pretty. We got silver and gold and shiny red.
Nice.
It's all set up. Yeah, it's quite nice having the necessary physical space to have a tree and then have one up as well. So that's sort of my big exciting moment for this week.
Well, that's a really humbling and personable high note, I think. That's good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything you want to share?
Yeah, I want to know what you're drinking tonight.
Oh, there's another, I might have mentioned these before. There's another brand of low carb beers that I have found from Phillips Brewing. They've got a sampler pack. No. Okay. Although I think I've had Dead Frog Sours. And there's a new Dead Frog Sour pack out now that I almost bought. But no, it's called Little Wonder. And it's a sampler pack. They've got a white ale, an IPA, a cloudy something, and one other thing. But they're all 2 grams of carbs.
Oh, really?
So I'm just loving the number of options that are appearing for low carb beer right now.
Now, do you think that's a diet thing? Do you think that's there's just
Yeah, I think more than anything else, it's a diet thing.
But it works out good for you because
it does, yeah.
Because of your
diabetes.
Condition. Yeah, I didn't want to.
Your condition. I think it sounds worse when you put it that way.
Sorry.
Yeah, because it used to be, as far as beer went, about the only thing they had was Sleem and Clear.
Sleem and Clear, yeah.
Which is okay. But it's not great.
You know what? When I go out, like if I'm heading to visit you, which I haven't done recently, obviously because of COVID, but
yeah,
when I don't know what to get, like that's my go-to. I was like, I'll buy a 12-pack of Sleem and Clear.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, and it's not bad, but
no.
But having more options is always nice.
Absolutely.
And there was I can't remember which brewery it was, but they had like a really, really good IPA, low carb IPA out for a while.
Oh, okay.
And now there's Phillips with this sampler pack of a few different things. So it's really like it's a good time to be a guy wanting low carb beer.
It's a good time to be a diabetic.
It's a good time to be a diabetic. I mean, I suppose when it comes to any medical condition, the current time is almost always better than any time previous because all of our medical treatments are so much better now than they were then, right?
Well, unless it's measles.
Why?
Well, because like people aren't being vaccinated for measles anymore, and it's making a comeback because of
Yeah, I guess that's true.
But that's rare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We saved the vaccine talk for my other podcast.
Yeah. We're not going to talk about vaccines. We're not going to we're not going to touch that. If you would like to know more about what they put in vaccines,
yeah, go over to halfcutconspiracies.podbean.com and myself and Carlos here will break that down for you. We know everything that's going in vaccines and
Do you know you don't? Do you know everything?
No.
Did you actually like list it out? Like all the ingredients?
No.
Oh, yeah.
No. All that matters, we were talking about how the concerns about the microchips shouldn't be that they're implanting microchips in your body. It's that the microchips are coming from Bill Gates, which means they're probably all going to crash. Anyway, this podcast is turning into the other podcast very quickly, so let's get back on track.
Oh, that's fine.
I gotta say, it was nice after spending a few months kind of drowning in racism and patriarchal society to experience such a nice, friendly, warm, uplifting book that somehow offends people.
I don't get how this offends anybody.
Yeah. What are we talking about today? We're talking about a book called I Am Jazz. It's by Jessica Herthel and Jazz Jennings. Jazz Jennings is, of course, the main character in the book, and the book describes her experience as a child, born in a boy's body, but as she puts it, with a girl's brain. And it's really almost exactly what you would expect a children's book of that subject to be like, talking about her experiences, talking about how she always felt like a girl, talking about how her favorite color is pink, talking about how she wants to grow up to do girl things, and how when her parents took her to a doctor, she and her family discovered the word transgender for the first time, and that sort of thing. Somehow, though, this is from 2010 to 2019, the 13th most banned or challenged book. 13th, like that places it higher than The Handmaid's Tale, which I think was in the mid to late 20s.
Jesus. I mean, yeah, there's so many worse places that book could have went. And it was just so, like you said, it was just a happy-go-lucky experience. Like,
yeah.
How does that offend anybody?
So here's some examples. In 2017, it was challenged because it portrays a transgender child and because of language, sex education, and offensive viewpoints.
There was nothing about sex in that book.
No, and I think this is where it starts getting into stretches, right? I think they're defining sex education as, any reference to, I don't know, the complications of gender, or I don't know. And I'm not sure where the offensive viewpoint is in the book either, beyond transgender people exist. Like, that is literally the only viewpoint in the book.
I don't see any complication either. There was no complicated issue. Like,
no.
Jazz felt like a girl, and yeah, well, how is that complicated?
In 2018, I like this example here. It was challenged but retained in a Rockland, California academy school. A transgender kindergarten student gave some books about her situation to her teacher, and the teacher read them to the class. Which, again, I think this is where books like this are valuable in, especially when you've got a student in your class who is having this experience. How can you communicate that to the rest of the class and help them understand it?
Yeah.
I think that's where these books are useful and what they're meant to do. However, some parents complained to the school board about being, quote, blindsided. The district responded that the books were age-appropriate, fell within the book selection policy, and that unlike sex education, the topic of gender identity did not require prior parental notice, to which I say high five to that school. Nicely done.
Yeah.
Although the superintendent stated that staff will be engaging parents and teachers in discussions about how materials outside our curriculum will be addressed in the future, but still, I think that's a positive approach from that school there. And in 2020, it was challenged and relocated for LGBTQIA plus content for a transgender character and for confronting a topic that is, quote, sensitive, controversial, and politically charged. I like it's so troubling to when someone's mere identity can be described as sensitive, controversial, and politically charged.
I wouldn't even say mere identity. Like there was there was no question in Jazz's mind. Like it wasn't even.
Yeah.
Like at one point, I started to question whether it was just like I liked pink. I liked this, I like that, and that's who I was, and that's
yeah.
I
mean, one thing. I mean, for me as an adult reading a children's book, of course, it would be. I would have appreciated more depth, of course, but this is a children's book, and it's not going to provide that. For example, I have a daughter who, her favorite color is pink. At least it was. I don't know if it still is. It might be purple now. And she's always like sort of princesses. What a traitor, right? Gender traitor, gender treachery, just like in The Handmaid's Tale.
Jesus Christ. I forgot about gender treachery.
But she's always really liked like superheroes and action shooter video games. Now in her case, that's just, a girl who happens to also like things that are considered boy things. And so, like, I've never thought, that she might be a transgender boy.
No, but I mean that.
But if she had come to me at certain points and said, like, I feel like I'm a boy, I feel like I want to do boy things when I grow up, that would be different. And I think in a lot of people's minds, here's a thing that happened the other day, which maybe, I don't know, maybe you saw it on my Facebook page. I ended up in a long argument with somebody over basically transgender people and whether or not transgender surgery in teens was an okay thing or not. And this guy I was debating with basically just erasing the existence of transgender, saying that it's not a thing, it's a mental illness, blah, 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 blah. And it's just, now that I've said all that, I don't remember what my point was, but it's so, one of the things I've discovered, especially while reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, is the importance of understanding that our lives and our experiences don't match other people's lives and experiences. And I think the people who are trying to argue that, transgender identity isn't a thing are people who find themselves going, well, I can't imagine how that would be, so therefore it isn't. And so they go to the assumption that, this is just a boy who happens to like girl things, and if we take enough time to teach him how to behave properly, eventually he'll realize that he's wrong. Or if we let him continue to do the girl things, and that's okay in the privacy of our home, but we're going to still force him to wear boy clothes when we go out and this sort of thing. Because it's just his experience and his opinion about who he is can't possibly be true, because I can't relate to it.
See, and I think that's where the true importance of books like this comes into play. You know, it is important, I think, and you know, this is just coming from my perspective, but I mean, I would say that for a transgender child to be in a situation where they can hear this from an adult, you know, like see this book, like hear these ideas and connect with them and feel understood would be important. But also for, you know, anybody who doesn't feel the same way, to just be able to empathize with people who are in that situation is very important as well. And yeah, what you're describing is definitely like a lack of empathy. It's a lack of understanding of, like you say, like other people have different experiences.
And not just a lack of understanding, but I think it almost feels like a lack of a desire to understand, right? Like there's just no willingness to take
well, I would say
whatever those steps
ignorance
are.
is like one of the biggest issues that we have in our society today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like I can't see how this would be banned. I mean, other than just people who, like you say, just are
they just don't want to have that discussion.
Yeah.
They don't want to have that discussion. They don't want their kids to be involved in the discussion. They don't want their kids to be aware that's the thing. And there's also the idea, some people think that that the transgender people who are coming out as transgender are doing it as a fad, that it's like a cool thing to do.
I mean, I'm not going to deny that might be an issue for like a very, very small percentage of people, you know, people who are just interested in notoriety or attention. You know, they're going to come up with anything. But like this is something that's been around forever.
Well, I think it's rare, for one thing, that somebody would do it just for attention. And
you think so?
Yeah, I think it's very rare because especially with the climate of, like, again, just it's the same thing as, you know, say in the 60s maybe, the idea that you know, homosexuality was a choice, when there is all that homophobia and everyone hating gays, and it's like,
you know, but we're still talking about like Western modern civilization as well. Like you look in like the Greek civilization, homosexuality was
yeah.
You know, like,
but no, what I'm saying is, well, yeah, we're talking about Western, you know, culture because that's where we live. That's who's censoring these books. My point being that, like, there was a time when people would argue that, you know, homosexuality was a choice, even though literally no one would choose to live that life given the climate and the culture that was so violently opposed to homosexuality. It's ridiculous to think that anyone would actually just choose that when they could have just as well chosen a different thing. You know, in the same way, I don't think, given how much negativity there is around, you know, transgender people, and admittedly it's not as bad, but it still is bad, that anyone
you don't
would
think
choose
it's
as like homosexuality at the, like, in the past.
I mean, I guess that's hard to say.
I think maybe, you know, amongst...
I think currently probably it's more accepted to be a homosexual than a transgender.
Yes. Yeah. But I would say that there are still more safe spaces for transgender people now than there were perhaps for gays in the 30s, 40s, 50s.
Yeah,
like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there, but yeah.
Well, safe spaces didn't exist at all, really.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, even not even just the 30s and 40s, but like even the 80s, like.
Oh yeah. The 80s was even worse, of course, because you know, there was the whole AIDS epidemic. So not only were you shunned by people, but you could die just by hooking up with somebody, and nobody would care if you got sick either, right? It was just, it's the gay disease, so it's your own fault. So I can't imagine what it would be like. And again, this comes from, you know, my experience as a perfectly, well, not perfectly.
Yeah. Okay. Let's pull that back a little bit, Todd.
Yeah. Let's go with like straight cis white male.
Yeah. Let's leave the perfectly out of it.
I've never had to, you know, wonder about whether what I'm feeling is normal or not, except maybe in regards to certain fetishes, which I'm not going to get into right now. But to have these things, and especially, transgender kids who are maybe in families that aren't supportive of that kind of thing, looking for validation or looking for acknowledgement that what they feel is legitimate, or looking for support. If that's something that they can get from either, a classroom where this book is read, or from a library where they get to have access to this book, that's so valuable.
Oh, absolutely.
I couldn't imagine having to struggle with something like that without having some assistance or guidance and
some validation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, it feels like maybe like the fear behind these sorts of ideas is like, if you're exposed to it, then that's where it begins. But it's just not the case. As far as I understand how it works and how, the human experience is, you are who you are. And, I mean, absolutely, there's a lot of people who are born male or female, and they identify wholeheartedly male or female, and they never question it. And it's all, perfectly fine. And there are people on the opposite end of that spectrum who are born male or female and identify with the complete opposite. And there are people just everywhere in between. I would say I wouldn't call myself transgender by any stretch of the word, but do I identify with the toxic masculine ideal? No, I don't. I have feelings. I like to watch things grow. I like to care for things. I mean, and that shouldn't be a thing that's like, anti-male, but
no.
When you really think of like, men, we're manly men, we're tough, and we build and we conquer, right? And like, there's just everything in between. There's both extremes. I had a point, and I feel like I'm just I feel like I'm just talking out of my ass because I am a straight, like you say, straight cis white man, but there's just so much more to the human. There's just so much more to the human experience than whether are you a male or female.
Yeah. And also I can't understand I can't wrap my head around the kind of ego it takes for someone to say, no, you don't know what your identity is, but I know what your identity is.
Yeah.
You can tell me that you are a woman, but I'm not going to accept that. And I'm going to tell you that you are, in fact, a boy, because I know better than you are what you are.
Yeah, that's fucked.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
And again, like, one of the reasons I wanted to read a book by a transgender author was to have a better understanding of their experience. And I won't really say that this book did that for me, again, because it's a children's book and it's not going to that kind of depth. Like, the real message of this story is that, like, everyone, like, believe in who you are, be who you are. And I think, like, I quoted one line from the book, which was right after the family had gone to the doctor and found out about transgender, because prior to this, when Jazz was going to the members of her family, her parents, her siblings, and saying, like, I want to wear girl clothes and I'm going to do girl things when I grow up, everyone's like, oh, you're so silly. And then once they went to the doctor and the doctor explained, what transgender was, and everyone was like, oh, we get it now. There's a moment where the parents say to Jazz, we love you no matter what. And I think that's ultimately the most important takeaway from this. This is how we need to treat everybody, regardless of who they say they are. Like, and I wonder, there was a story that somebody posted to my Facebook wall. This is why I brought up the Facebook thing earlier. in the midst of that debate about transgender identity, somebody posted a story about a child, a 15-year-old, who was removed from his family because his family didn't approve of him getting gender reassignment surgery.
Okay.
And there's not a lot in the story. There's no details about who these people are because the teenager is underage, and so you can't reveal their identities and everything else. But one of the things I found myself wondering is like it said in the story that his father's refusal to accept his identity really hurt him. And again, this is just like throwing shit out there. This is not related to anything. This is just a wild theory. But I wonder if when he, or whichever gender, I don't remember what it is in the story, when they revealed themselves to their parent, if the parent had responded with something more like, that's okay, I love you no matter what, they might not have been so quick to rush towards surgery. Whether or not surgery was a way of trying to force a parent to acknowledge their identity. It's like, okay, I tell you that I'm really a girl and you don't accept that. Well, what if I look more like a girl? Would that make it more acceptable? Would that make it easy for you to accept? Yeah. I have no idea if that's even remotely true or if that's, a way that somebody would go, but it's just a question I found myself wondering whether or not, because certainly not having any validation and acceptance from your parents has got to be like incredibly damaging.
Oh, absolutely. In any sense. Like your parents are a huge part of who you understand yourself to be, right? And how and your self-worth. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I wonder, I don't know too much about what the best age would be for surgery. I don't know if it's better pre-adulthood or if it's a fine procedure to have done as an adult. I don't understand. I don't know the science behind that, right?
Yeah, and I'm gonna speak out of my ass just for a second here because
Okay.
I think I have just enough information to probably be wrong about what I'm gonna say.
Okay.
But I think in a lot of cases it's actually in the long term better if it can be done sort of before puberty, or at the very least, I know there are times when kids will take hormone blockers, I think is what they are, that prevent sort of the onset of puberty.
Okay.
So I think it's easier to make changes before those sort of the hormones associated with puberty start going through your body, because basically when you go through a gender change, it's a lot of punching the opposite hormones into yourself.
Now, is there one transition that is medically easier than the other?
As far as like male to female versus female to male?
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea.
Okay. Yeah.
I think they all have
either
complications, but one thing I would say, if people are interested in sort of learning more about transgender people, is there's a lot of really fantastic people on Twitter and other social media who are open to sharing about their experiences, and that's where I've sort of gotten my information just as far as what their experiences, because that's what I want to know about, because what they're going through, I can't relate to. I've not gone through that, so. It's been a very, very informative thing. One person I follow on Twitter, Emily Vanderwerf, she's an entertainment writer and TV critic who came out, I want to say might have been 2 years ago, and has been really, really, really open on her platform and in a lot of her entertainment writing as well, about her transition and what that's been like. And it's been really, I guess, an honor to sort of follow her story and see how it's gone for her, and credit to her and everyone else, and to Jazz Jennings as well. It's hard enough, I imagine, going through that process, but then to be brave enough to put your story in a book like that, and have your story, which is such a simple, ultimately, I think, loving story, be the 13th most banned book in the last decade is bonkers.
It is. It is. Absolutely.
She's also actually, I Am Jazz is the name of a reality TV show, which I didn't realize when I first picked this book to do. But yeah, it's been on since 2015, and it follows Jazz Jennings' life on TV. So, that's somewhere else you could look if you're interested in learning more about transgender individuals. It's on TLC, I think.
Okay.
There's a transgender woman who on YouTube who goes by the name ContraPoints, or at least that's the name of her channel. Brilliant YouTube star. And most of her videos are sort of very, very deep dives. They're anywhere from like 40 minutes to an hour on really interesting subjects. Everything from toxic masculinity to transgender issues and all kinds of stuff like that. But again, if you're interested in subjects around, transgender people and stuff like that, I think she's definitely worth a look on YouTube. Recommend that. ContraPoints.
ContraPoints. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
Because I think at the very least, we all should be more willing to learn and more willing to be informed about the people around us who aren't like us, so that we can better understand who they are. Why wouldn't we want to do that? Why wouldn't we want to do our best to understand, the people in your neighborhood, as they say, as the fine Fred Rogers would talk about.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many complexities to the human experience, and to think that your reality is the only reality is it's arrogant. It's unnecessary in this day and age. I think it's there's just so many facets to the human experience that you don't get to experience, but you can at least empathize with.
Mm-hmm. I think one thing we should all do as a society is maybe we retire those "What would Jesus do" bracelets, and instead we go with "What would Fred Rogers do?" Because I think almost always you're going to end up with a better solution that way. If you look at meeting a transgender child, what Fred Rogers would do would be to give them a hug and say that you are valuable and you are loved. And I think that's the reaction that we should have, not "you are wrong and broken and your book needs to be banned." And the fact that it is the 13th most banned book is just, again, it's appalling. Yeah. I don't know if I could possibly say that enough.
Read this book or watched the video of her reading this book, there is absolutely nothing in this book that I think deserves to be banned.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I am going to try to include a link to the YouTube video of her reading the book in the description of this podcast. So if you listen to this podcast right now in your podcast browser machine, look in the description and you can follow a link at Jazz Jennings reading her own book. It's less than 5 minutes long. It's not a long book.
Yeah.
But it's, again, I can't, and again, this comes down to the question of how hard it is to understand other people's perspectives. As much as I don't understand what it's like to be, a transgender child, I don't know what it's like to be somebody who would read this book and go, "This is disgusting and needs to be kept from my child." So I'm just in the dark and confused about everything, as a white cis male should be, I guess.
As a semi-open-minded white cis male.
I'm very open-minded, sir.
No, I know. I'm joking. No, I'm just trying to say, I think the people that would try to ban this book would be pretty close-minded. In general, but that's me generalizing, so I don't know.
I mean, I mean, the whole idea of banning anything, I think, generally comes from a place of closed-mindedness. It comes from the fact that we don't want this idea or this information in the minds of others, or in the minds of my kids, or in the minds of whoever. It's about keeping minds closed, really.
I mean, if we are going to touch on the topic of whether or not banning something is good, I mean, I would say that there is a certain amount of protection that children need from certain stimulus. And it's hard, I would say, to determine where that line is. If you have a fear of the transgender population, then you might have a fear of children being exposed to a book like this. And I guess I could understand where you would be coming from. I wouldn't agree with you, but I could understand where you're coming from. We wouldn't want children to watch videos of people being murdered. We wouldn't want to watch videos of people being raped. We wouldn't want people like exposed to that. So there is a certain amount of, I guess banning, I don't know if banning is the right word, but you know, where's that line though? Where do we draw that line? That's the question, really.
Yeah.
I think that like watching I think that a book like this or things like this, they don't harm anyone.
No. Oh, absolutely
not. You know
not.
what I mean? And whereas like the next book that we're going to look at, A Clockwork Orange, a lot of the behavior of the protagonist is harmful, if I remember the movie correctly, and I'm assuming the book follows in you know, the general direction of violence and rape and, you know, just a whole lot of what is the worst of what is a human being. And I can see how things like that would be, you would want that censored. You would want that, you know, not.
Well, obviously every case is different.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone, you know, is arguing that A Clockwork Orange should be part of the kindergarten curriculum, even if it's just the movie and not the book, because the book is probably too complex for them to read. But, you know, it's a case-by-case thing. And it's the line that you draw is different in a case-by-case situation. Like I said in our wrap-up of The Handmaid's Tale, I think every girl ages 13 and up needs to read that book. And ultimately, that's an arbitrary line. I think probably there's some 12-year-olds who could, you know, learn something from it.
See, and I would disagree
too.
in the opposite direction. I would say that this is probably more like a 16, 17. Like the Handmaid's Tale, I wouldn't say a 13-year-old would be quite the right age for that book.
Okay.
Personally. Knowing myself as a 13-year-old and how impressionable I was and how much I didn't understand about the world, and to read a book like that, I think would have really set itself deep in my subconscious in a way. But I am very sensitive in that way to media and to art and things like that. But yeah, I don't know.
But my point is that I don't think anyone is arguing that like all media should be available to all people of all ages. No. I mean, I guess to a certain extent, like, yeah, okay, if my kindergarten child happened to walk to my bookshelf, grab my copy of The Handmaid's Tale off of it and start reading it and enjoyed it and absorbed it, like, I'm not going to stop them. Maybe I would at kindergarten, but I mean, I was reading Stephen King novels in the 3rd grade. I actually have memories of reading portions of Stephen King books that described sexual acts that made zero sense to me because I didn't know what sex was at that time. And I'm just like, okay, I don't know what this is. But I was still able to absorb the book.
Okay.
Maybe that wasn't wise. Maybe that is why it turned out as I did. But so yeah, I mean, it's a question of what's appropriate, when it's appropriate, and
I guess who makes that decision? Like and we talked about this, like, I think on the first episode, it was like, who?
Well, in most of these cases, you're going to find that it's either the schools or the school districts, because that's where most of these books are being banned, is at the school level. Obviously, when it comes to what's going on because there's two things. It's like, when do I let my children experience it in the home, and then it's in the hands of the parents, and then it's also, when is it safe to allow this? Because I wouldn't argue that this book should be taught to 13-year-olds, right? I think that would be a harder fight, even though I think a 13-year-old book, not this book, but back to Handmaid's Tale.
The Handmaid's Tale, yeah.
I do think 13-year-olds should read it, but I think it would be a harder struggle to convince a school board that it should be taught at the 13-year-old level. I could see it being taught, as you suggested, at like a 16-year-old level. But I also think that most 13-year-olds probably could absorb it and learn from it, and that sort of thing. And in fact, I think it's a mistake to hide ideas from kids because out of the idea that they're not mature enough.
I disagree.
Yeah.
I disagree. I think that there is, there's a certain amount of impressionism for a younger child, and to expose them to certain things and for them to feel like those things are okay. I disagree with that. I think that children do need protection for their own mind's sake.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would say protection, but yeah, again, I wouldn't read The Handmaid's Tale to a 9-year-old, but then maybe that's just because a 9-year-old would get bored.
Then you understand. You agree. You agree with me.
What?
That there is a certain amount, like there is a point to certain ideas, to certain age.
Yeah, again, but it's not universal though. It's like not every 10-year-old kid is at the same emotional or intellectual level.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. But you gotta think about. You gotta empathize with the most impressionable portion of that population, right? Like, you have to understand. Like if you do, you say you expose a certain medium to everybody at the age of 12. And the vast majority of that population is going to be understanding. They're going to have the emotional capacity, the intellectual capacity to understand this is fiction, that this is just a story, it's an idea, and they will gain from that. But there are, there is a certain amount of impressionability. The younger you go, that makes ideas a little more dangerous, I think. I don't have any kids, but I was a kid once, and I know that some things that I were exposed to that I shouldn't have been exposed to, I think, and kind of, took years to kind of understand, because I didn't understand at the time, and I carried with me this incomplete idea of a very complicated thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's just I guess that's my personal experience. Yeah. I feel like I should have been a little more guarded as a child from certain things. And I'm talking about the internet. I was free to roam the internet as a kid. And the internet when I was a kid was the wild fucking west. I mean, I guess it's not really, doesn't really have anything to do with this book, because this book doesn't really touch on anything that I think would be a sensitive topic for anybody of any age. I really don't understand why this would be banned other than just ignorance. But I would disagree that, or I maybe not disagree, because I don't know if you made this point, but I would say that protection for the more vulnerable, which would be the younger population, is important. It is something that needs to be taken seriously. And I guess that's part of this whole podcast, is like,
Yeah, I think obviously, not every person not every person of any age, is comfortable with every single piece of media out there. Just between yourself and I, between you and me, there's stuff that I have watched that I'm sure that you would not watch if your life depended on it.
Yeah.
I have higher tolerance. I guess it's higher tolerance to like really fucked up shit. I'm okay with that. I think, there's looking at things from an individual person's level as far as what they're able to, process and understand and come away with in positive ways. And then there's, your classroom environments where, you probably have to try to play to the lowest common denominator, right? So if you have, a bunch of kids that are roughly, let's just say, at a certain level intellectually or, emotionally, and then somebody else who's like way lower than that, you either have to, make sure that the kid who's in the lower end can still understand the media that you're absorbing, or else, keep him separate from the media or whatever. You do have to consider sort of the lowest common denominator in the classroom environment. So when I say things like every 13-year-old girl should read The Handmaid's Tale, it's probably possible that there are some 13-year-old girls out there who shouldn't. So, don't take my word as an excuse to go and tie up children and read them this book, even if they're not enjoying it. So I think what we've learned today is don't tie up kids and force them to listen to books. Treat people with love and respect, even if they're different than you are. Be true to who you are. Anything else? Did I miss anything?
Love, man.
Love, man.
No, I thought it was beautifully simple.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't try to be too much. It was just...
I think it gave kids just as much as they needed to know to understand the situation and be comfortable with it. There's nothing odd about this. It's just it's a person who was born one way and feels a different way, and that's how they're going to live their life. And if you encounter somebody who's like that, then that's cool. If you are somebody who feels like that, then that's also cool. Let this book give you permission to, be your true self, whoever that happens to be. And to all our listeners, should be your true selves, whoever that happens to be. Unless you're a serial killer, don't be that. Other than that, though, probably okay. I think that's all we got to say about this.
Yeah, no, I'm actually really shocked that this was banned.
Yeah, it's
was it banned in was this the top 13 banned in the States or like in Canada?
It's probably the States. I'd have to go look at that list again.
I can't see that this would be like super challenged here.
ALA, I don't know what the ALA is. At no point do they tell me what it means.
Have you Google searched what is the ALA?
No, I'm on my phone. I'm going to assume that it's the American Library Association. Oh, there it is. I just saw it. The American Library Association. Okay. So this is banned in America. Okay. Worth noting, though, that I think, hang on. Yeah. So the Captain Underpants series is the second most banned book in the last decade. So yeah. Another one here, though, that I wouldn't mind covering is 13 Reasons Why. It was adapted into a Netflix series.
It was. I haven't seen it, but my girlfriend's a big fan.
Yeah, if you got 5 minutes to spare, go give this book a listen. Link is in the podcast description. It's a really, really warm-hearted story. Not too complex. It's intended for, I think, very young children. Watch it with your kid if you have kids.
Yeah.
It might help them understand things that they have experienced in school or haven't, or will experience in school, or even might help them process what's going on in their own brains. Help them understand who they are. But that's all I got to say. How about you?
Yeah, it was just a lovely little book about one person's experience, and I could definitely see how this would help a young child empathize with either themselves or maybe the children around them.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Reminder that if you like what we're doing here and want to help support it, we are on Patreon. It's patreon.com/blah, blah, blah media. That's BLAH media, where you can support us at a number of different financial levels if you like what we're doing. And if you like what we're doing and don't want to support us, that's okay too. We know it's a tough time right now with COVID-19 still going on. Money's tight for everyone, so keep your dollars at home if you need to. My name's Todd Sullivan.
And I'm Oren Barter.
And you have been listening to When Bad Things Happen to Good People. Now, go read a fucking book.
Please.